AITA for ending payments after my in-laws kicked me out, but still wanted my money? I'm Steven, 42, and by the time this happened, Maren and I had been married for 14 years. I was the husband who paid bills on Sunday mornings with cold coffee next to my laptop, replaced the garage batteries without being asked, and kept telling myself that staying calm was the same as keeping the peace. For a long time, I thought our marriage was strained, not broken. I thought if I stayed steady enough, Maren would eventually remember we were supposed to be on the same team. That was my first mistake. Maren wasn't always the woman who sat across from me at her mother's dining table and asked me to disappear but keep the money flowing. In the beginning, she was sharp and funny in a way that made ordinary errands feel less mundane. She could turn a bad restaurant into a private joke before the check came. She remembered tiny details about people. She defended me once at a birthday dinner when her brother, Calder, made a joke about me being too serious. "Steven isn't serious," she had said back then, reaching under the table for my hand. "He just thinks before he talks. You should try it sometime." I love that about her. Her loyalty felt like a locked door between us and the rest of the world. I just didn't notice when that door started closing with me on the outside. The change didn't happen in one huge fight. It happened in small, annoying moments that I told myself weren't worth ruining a night over. Her mother, Vesper, had a spare key for emergencies. At some point, emergencies became any Tuesday she felt like stopping by. I'd come home and find her standing in our kitchen with grocery bags on the counter, looking through the mail like she was helping. "You left the porch light on all day," she said once, waving an electric bill at me. I took it from her hand and said, "A text before you come over would be nice." She smiled like I had made a joke in poor taste. "I'm family, Steven. I shouldn't need an appointment." Maren, who was taking containers out of one of the bags, sighed without looking at me. "Don't make this weird." So I didn't. That became a theme. Calder borrowed my tools and returned them dirty, if he returned them at all. He borrowed my car once because his was making a sound and brought it back with the tank almost empty and a fast food bag shoved under the passenger seat. He laughed when I mentioned the gas. "You're better at this adult stuff than me," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "That's not a payment plan," I told him. Maren shot me a look in the hallway later. "Why do you have to embarrass him?" I asked him to replace the gas he used. He already feels bad enough about his situation. Calder's situation always seemed to include my wallet. A phone line added here. A car-related payment covered there. A late insurance add-on that somehow landed in the pile of things I handled because I was the organized one. Vesper had medical balances Maren cried over, saying her mother was too proud to ask for help. Family dinners became mine to cover because arguing over the check made me look cheap in front of everyone. I told myself it was easier to pay than to fight. That was my second mistake. Money in our house became something I was allowed to earn, manage, and quietly distribute, but not question. If I asked why a charge from Vesper's pharmacy showed up on a supplemental card, Maren said I was cold. If I asked why Calder's subscription was still attached to my account, she said I was petty. If I opened a credit card statement and asked about another family dinner I hadn't attended, she said, "You always make generosity feel like an audit." I remember looking down at the statement, my thumb pressed against a line of charges, and saying, "Because lately, it comes with monthly statements." She didn't answer that. She just folded her arms and looked at me like I had failed a test I didn't know I was taking. My younger sister, Aloan, saw it before I did. She had never been impressed by Maren's family, mostly because Vesper once called her intense for asking why everyone expected me to pay for Calder's emergency tire replacement. A few months before the final blow-up, I called Aloan from the garage after another argument with Maren. I remember sitting on an old cooler, listening to the dryer thumping inside the house, while Maren ignored me from the bedroom. Aloan let me talk for maybe 5 minutes before she cut in. "You're not keeping the peace," she said. "You're financing disrespect and calling it patience. That's a little dramatic." "No, Steven, dramatic is inviting your mother into your marriage and handing her a key. What you're doing is denial with autopay." I almost laughed because she sounded so angry on my behalf, but the truth of it sat heavy in my chest. "I'm trying not to make everything worse," I said. "Then stop explaining your feelings to people who have budgeted for your silence. Print things. Save things. And for once, don't pay a bill just because someone makes a sad face." I told her I heard her. I didn't actually listen until the dinner. Marin called it a family dinner, but from the second we walked in, I knew it wasn't a normal family dinner. The room felt too neat. The napkins were folded. Nobody was arguing about where to sit. Calder was leaning back in his chair with his phone face down beside his plate, which he never did unless he was trying to look respectful. Vesper moved around the kitchen slowly, carrying dishes like she was hosting a memorial service. Thaddeus was there too, an older relative on Marin's side. I liked him well enough. He was one of those men who didn't speak often, but when he did, everyone leaned in because he usually tried to be fair. That night, he wouldn't quite look at me. I should have left before the salad. Instead, I sat beside Marin and tried to act like my stomach wasn't tied in knots. Halfway through dinner, Vesper set down her fork and nodded at Marin. That was how I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Marin turned toward me, her red eyes looking more rehearsed than real. I need space, Stephen, she said. Real space. I can't heal while you're in the house, making everything feel tense. I put my water glass down carefully. Heal from what, exactly? Her mouth tightened. From years of feeling controlled. From walking on eggshells. From feeling like I have to choose between my husband and my family. That last line had Vesper's fingerprints all over it. Calder stared at the table, shaking his head like he hated that it had come to this. Marin kept going. I'm not saying you have to vanish forever, but I think the decent thing would be for you to stay somewhere else for a while. Let me breathe. Let me feel safe in my own home. It's my home too, I said. Vesper's eye sharpened. A good husband doesn't make his wife beg for safety. There it was. Safety. Healing. Space. All those polished words arranged around a demand. I looked at Marin. Are you asking me to leave the house? I'm asking you to stop making this harder than it has to be. Calder finally spoke. Come on, man. You know how this looks. Money has always been how you keep control. A couple of relatives shifted in their chairs. Someone murmured my name like I was about to embarrass myself. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I kept my hands flat on the table. What does money have to do with me leaving? I asked. Marin glanced at Vesper before answering. It was quick, but I saw it. The bills can't just stop because you're upset, she said. The mortgage still needs to be paid. Utilities. Insurance. Groceries. I need stability while I figure out what comes next. I looked around the table. Thaddeus had his brow furrowed. Vesper looked almost relieved, like we had finally reached the part she had rehearsed. So you want me gone, I said. But you want my payments to stay? Marin flinched. That's not fair. No? Then say it plainly. Vesper leaned forward. This is not about money. This is about compassion. Calder added. Nobody told you to be dramatic. I ignored him and kept my eyes on my wife. Are you asking me to leave my own life? Or are you asking me to keep paying for yours? Marin's face went pale, then hard. I'm asking you to be decent. The room was silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I nodded once. All right, then I'll make it very simple. Vesper's mouth moved like she expected more. Calder blinked. Marin looked confused, and I realized she had expected pleading. She had expected me to defend myself, to apologize, to ask for another chance in front of everyone. I stood up, picked up my keys, and left without touching the rest of my food. But I didn't leave the house. That distinction mattered. I drove around for 20 minutes because I knew if I went straight home, I might say something stupid. I pulled into a parking lot, put the car in park, and called Aloan. She answered on the second ring. What happened? I told her. Not well. I was angry enough that my sentences came out clipped and ugly. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do not leave that house because they embarrassed you into it. I'm not planning to. Good. Don't text Marin anything emotional. Don't call Vesper. Don't post. Don't threaten. Go home, sit down, and build a record. A record? Mortgage statements, bank transfers, credit cards, texts, voicemails, every payment, every request, every weird message. Print it. Save it. Send nothing angry. I leaned back in the driver's seat and closed my eyes. Aloan, my marriage just ended at a dinner table. No, she said. Your marriage became evidence at a dinner table. That's different. I went home. Marin wasn't there. She had stayed with Vesper, or at least that was my guess. The house was quiet in a way that made every ordinary object look accused. Her shoes were by the back door. A half-empty mug sat by the sink. The throw blanket she always used was folded on the couch. I made coffee because my hands needed something to do. I forgot about it until it went cold beside the laptop. Then I opened the accounts. At first, I was just gathering mortgage statements, utilities, insurance, joint checking records, my separate savings account, credit card statements, the automatic bill pay list. I started dropping files into folders on my desktop with boring names because Eloan's voice kept playing in my head. Boring holds up better than rage. The numbers looked worse when they weren't scattered across months of Sunday mornings. I had been paying most of the mortgage. Not just contributing, paying. Marin's deposits into the joint account had become irregular, but the withdrawals never missed their schedule. I had covered Vesper's medical balance twice in 1 year. I had paid off a credit card Marin said was just a temporary mess, only to find another balance building quietly behind it. Calder's phone line was under my account, so it was a roadside assistance plan he used more than I did. There were car-related payments I had covered after Marin told me he was one bad week away from losing everything. There were dinners, grocery runs, pharmacy charges, streaming subscriptions, insurance add-ons, random transfers labeled with family-friendly words like help and mom. I sat there with a highlighter in my hand, laughing once under my breath because it was either that or put my fist through the wall. I thought I had been helping. The numbers said I had been maintaining a lifestyle for people who had just voted me out of it. Before midnight, I stopped every automatic payment that wasn't a legal household obligation or something Marin was clearly entitled to access. I didn't touch the mortgage payment scheduled through the proper account. I didn't shut off utilities. I didn't lock Marin out of anything she had a lawful right to use. But Vesper's supplemental card? Frozen. Calder's phone line? Scheduled for removal with notice through the carrier. Family subscriptions under my name? Cancelled. The roadside plan and insurance add-ons that only Calder used? Removed. The grocery delivery membership tied to Vesper's address and my card? Gone. I changed passwords for services in my name. I changed the garage and security codes where I legally could, then made sure Marin still had the access she was supposed to have. I saved doorbell clips showing Vesper letting herself in without notice and Calder using the garage code like the place was a storage unit. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt awake. At 12:38 a.m., I got the first text from Marin. You can't just cut off my family because you're mad. I stared at the screen. I hadn't told her anything. No one should have known yet unless a card had been declined or someone had been watching accounts closely. A minute later, Vesper left a voicemail. Stephen, this is cruel. You don't punish a mother because you are angry at her daughter. Marin has carried enough of your coldness. You showed your true colors tonight. Then Calder posted in the family group chat. Cutting people off financially is exactly what control looks like. A cousin replied with a thumbs down. Another wrote, this is disappointing, Stephen. I typed 3 different responses and deleted all of them. Then I sent one line. All future financial matters will be handled in writing or through counsel. Calder responded almost immediately. Counsel? Seriously? Nobody told you to be dramatic. I didn't answer. The next morning, I woke up on the couch because I hadn't wanted to sleep in the bed. My phone was full of messages. Vesper called me selfish. Calder called me petty. Marin sent a long text about how I was proving exactly why she needed space. Then something odd happened. A screenshot bundle appeared in a family thread that included me. It was there for maybe 5 seconds before Marin deleted it. But my phone had already shown a preview on the lock screen. Calder, don't let him sleep in that house another night. If he leaves first but keeps paying, he'll look guilty if he tries to come back later. I sat up slowly. The message disappeared, replaced by Marin's sorry, wrong thread. My phone rang. Eloan. Did you see that? She asked. Yes. Do not react. I wasn't going to. You were absolutely going to. I looked at my half-written text to Marin and deleted it. Eloan said, before you answer anyone, check what you already have legal access to. Shared laptop? Synced files? Anything she saved herself. There was an old household laptop in the den that we both used for taxes, bills, and printing. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't password protected against me. Marin used it for family stuff because she hated typing long messages on her phone. I opened it and found a folder in the downloads that Marin must have used while preparing for the dinner. It had screenshots, notes, and a document titled Talking Points, which made my stomach turn. I didn't open anything private that I had no right to access. I didn't hack her accounts. I didn't guess passwords. I looked at files sitting on a shared household computer tied to bills and records I already managed. And there it was. Vesper had written, "He will try to make this about money. Keep bringing it back to safety." Another message from Vesper said, "You need a few more months of breathing room before he realizes how much he covers. Once he is out, he will calm down and keep paying if the family pressure is strong enough." Calder's message was even worse in full. "If Stephen leaves first but keeps paying, he'll look guilty if he tries to come back later. Don't let him frame it as you kicking him out. Make it sound like he chose to give you space." Marin's response was not what I wanted it to be. "What if he refuses?" Calder replied, "He never refuses for long. He hates looking like the bad guy." That was the moment it stopped being a bad dinner and became a paper trail. I sat there for a long time, reading and rereading the messages, waiting for grief to turn into rage. But the main thing I felt was embarrassment. Not because they tricked me, because they knew me. They knew exactly which buttons to press because I had spent years labeling those buttons kindness, patience, and being the bigger person. I saved the files. I printed the relevant pages. I added them to a folder with tabs, mortgage, cards, transfers, messages, timeline. Then I called Lenora. She wasn't a miracle worker. She didn't promise some dramatic courtroom victory. She didn't tell me to burn Marin's life down or clean out accounts or change locks. She listened, asked precise questions, and told me where to stop talking and start documenting. "Do not let family pressure make legal decisions for you," she said. "I'm not leaving the house because they told me to." Good. People can ask you to leave. That doesn't mean they have the authority to remove you. Also, you can stop voluntary support. You cannot play games with obligations. I'm not trying to. Then make that obvious. Clean paper trail. No emotional language. No threats. No insults. From now on, make the paper trail cleaner than their story. She reviewed the mortgage information, the account records, and the property documents without turning it into a lecture. She helped me prepare a certified letter stating that all financial and property conversations needed to be in writing, that I would continue meeting legal obligations, and that informal support for Vesper, Calder, and any non-household family expenses had ended. The letter was boring. That was the point. Boring holds up better than rage. Marin came home 2 days later, but she didn't come alone. Vesper dropped her off and stood in the doorway like she expected me to move aside for inspection. The new code had stopped her at the garage earlier. I knew because I had a doorbell clip of her trying it twice, then looking straight into the camera like the camera had personally betrayed her. Marin stepped inside with a small suitcase and avoided looking at me. Vesper said, "So now I need permission to help my daughter?" I kept my voice level. "Marin has access. You don't. I am her mother. And this is not your house." Marin whispered, "Stephen, please don't do this right now." I looked at her. "All financial and property issues go through writing or Lenora." Vesper scoffed. "Lenora, you got a lawyer because your wife asked for space." "No, I got a lawyer because your family held a vote about my home and my money." Marin's eyes filled. For 1 second, she looked like the woman I used to know, scared and cornered and maybe sorry. Then Vesper put a hand on her shoulder, and the old pattern clicked back into place. "You're proving exactly why I needed space," Marin said. I nodded toward the hallway. "Then take it. In writing." The backlash got louder before it got quieter. Vesper tried to use the supplemental card at a medical billing portal and called me 3 times after it was declined. Calder sent me a message asking if I was really going to make him lose his phone line over one rough conversation. A cousin I barely spoke to wrote, "You should be ashamed. Family helps family." I sent the same response to all of them. "I will meet my legal responsibilities. I will not provide informal financial support. All further communication about this needs to be in writing." Calder hated that one. "You always had the power here," he wrote. I answered once. "You wanted me out of your family, so I stopped paying for your family." He didn't respond for almost an hour, which was the closest thing to peace I had felt all week. Then Marin demanded a family discussion. Her text came on a Thursday evening while I was reheating dinner I had forgotten to eat the night before. "You need to explain yourself to everyone. You scared me, humiliated my mom, and punished Calder for supporting me. If you have any respect left for this family, you'll come Sunday and apologize." I read it twice. Then I replied, "I will be there. Bring everyone who judged me, and we will keep it factual." Eloan came over Saturday night and helped me make copies. She was angry enough to staple aggressively. You know they're going to interrupt, she said. I know. Don't get dragged into feelings. Documents first. Boundaries second. Exit third. You sound like Lenora. Lenora sounds expensive. I sound free. I laughed for the first time in days. Sunday felt different from the first dinner. The first time, I had walked in confused and hoping the tension could be managed. This time, I walked in with a folder under my arm and no appetite for being liked. It was the same kind of room, the same careful quiet. Vesper sat at the head of the table, already wearing her disappointed face. Calder leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, trying to look casual. Marin sat near her mother, hands folded tightly in front of her. Thaddeus was there again. This time, he looked directly at me. Vesper began before I was fully seated. I hope you understand how much damage you have done, she said. A decent husband protects his wife's peace. You responded with financial punishment. Calder shook his head. It's petty, man. Really petty. Marin's voice was softer, which somehow made it worse. You proved exactly why I needed to get away from you. I placed the folder on the table. No, I said. I proved what happens when the person you push out stops paying for admission. Vesper's face tightened. That is an ugly thing to say. So was asking me to leave my home, while keeping me on the hook for everyone's comfort. Marin looked around the room. See? Everything is money to him. I pulled out my phone and sent the email Lenora had helped me format. It went to the people present. Attached was a clean timeline with dates, payment records, screenshots, and a copy of the certified letter. No insults. No speculation. Just the order of events and the numbers attached to them. Phones began buzzing around the room. I said, if you're going to judge me, you're going to judge the whole story. Calder pushed off the wall. What is this? Receipts. I opened the folder and started with the mortgage statements. I showed the payment history, the joint account deposits, and the months where I covered the shortage without making it a public issue. Then the cards. Vesper's charges. Calder's expenses. The phone line. The insurance add-on. The transfers. Marin's hidden credit card balance that I had paid down after she told me it was a one-time emergency. Vesper interrupted. You are humiliating your wife. I looked at her. No. You humiliated me with a room full of lies. I brought the receipts. The room went still. Marin's face crumpled, but she didn't deny the payments. I moved to the messages. Calder's expression changed before I read them aloud. That was how I knew he had opened the attachment. Don't, he said. I looked at him. Don't what? That's private. So was my marriage, I said, until all of you turned it into a family vote. Nobody moved. I didn't read every line. I didn't need to. I read Calder's message about making sure I left first while continuing to pay, so I would look guilty later. I read Vesper's message about keeping the language focused on safety. I read the line about getting a few more months of breathing room before I realized how much I was covering. Marin whispered, you weren't supposed to see that. That hurt more than a denial would have. I looked at her. Not that isn't true. Not I didn't mean it. Just that I wasn't supposed to see it. Her eyes filled again. I was scared. Of what? That I'd stop paying for people who were planning how to remove me. Vesper snapped. She was scared of your control. Thaddeus finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room cleanly. Marin, did you ask him to leave and still expect him to cover all of this? Marin opened her mouth, closed it, and looked at her mother. Vesper started to answer for her. That is not the point. Thaddeus didn't look away from Marin. It is exactly the point. Marin wiped under one eye. I needed stability. Did you ask him to leave and keep paying? Thaddeus asked again. She stared at the table. Calder muttered, this is getting twisted. Thaddeus turned toward him. That is not the version we were told. For the first time, Calder looked smaller than his own attitude. I took out the last page. My boundaries. I had typed them because I knew if I tried to speak from memory, someone would pull me into defending myself line by line. I'll meet every legal responsibility I have, I said. I will not fund anyone's attempt to remove me from my own life. From now on, financial and property matters go through writing or counsel. I'm not abandoning shared responsibilities because relatives voted on it. I'm not paying expenses for Vesper or Calder. I'm not discussing this in group chats. And if anyone spreads a story about me controlling Marin with money, I will answer it with the records. Vesper's mouth tightened. So you are threatening us? No. I am giving you the same thing you tried to give me. Consequences. Marin looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something like panic behind the hurt. Not fear of me. Fear that the old version of me, the one who absorbed every insult and paid every balance afterward, was gone. Stephen, she said softly, I didn't think it would go this far. I almost said, neither did I. Instead, I said, that's because you thought I'd rather look decent than be treated decently. The meeting ended without a dramatic explosion. Real family disasters usually do. People didn't stand up and clap. Nobody gave a speech about how wrong they had been. A few relatives avoided my eyes. One aunt quietly left the room. Calder kept scrolling through the email like if he read it long enough, the words might rearrange themselves. Vesper tried one last time at the door. You have broken this family, she said. I looked at Marin, then at Calder, then back at Vesper. No, I said. I just stopped paying for the cracks. After that, things moved into the dull, necessary world of lawyers, account changes, and written messages. Marin's lawyer contacted Lenora, and from what Lenora told me, the financial picture wasn't what Marin's family had been presenting. Nobody was destroyed overnight. There were no movie-style consequences, just uncomfortable ones. Vesper lost access to my money and, with it, a lot of her authority. It turned out her confidence sounded different when she couldn't back it with someone else's card. Calder had to deal with his own bills. He sent one angry message about how I had made him look dependent, and I almost responded before realizing he had done that without my help. The family group chat went quiet, painfully quiet. The same people who had found time to tell me to walk away with dignity suddenly had nothing to say when dignity came with attachments. 2 days after the second meeting, Thaddeus texted me. I heard one side. That was my mistake. I should have asked more questions before I formed an opinion. I'm sorry. I stared at that message for a long time. It wasn't everything. It didn't fix my marriage. It didn't erase the humiliation. But it mattered because one person in that room had been willing to change his mind when facts showed up. Marin and I didn't have some emotional kitchen table reconciliation. She tried, once, to talk without lawyers. She found me on a Monday morning at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee into a mug I actually planned to drink while it was hot for once. I know you hate me, she said. I set the pot down. I don't hate you. You act like you do. No, I act like I finally believe you. She looked away. I felt trapped, she said. I believe that you felt trapped. I don't believe that gave you the right to set me up. Her lip trembled. My mom said if I didn't make it public, you'd talk me out of it. And Calder. She didn't answer. That was enough. I told her any real conversation about the house, money, or separation had to go through Lenora or be in writing. She cried, and I hated that it still hurt to see it. 14 years doesn't disappear just because someone betrays you. Part of me still remembered the woman who squeezed my hand under restaurant tables and defended me from cheap jokes. But memory isn't a mortgage payment. Love isn't a legal strategy. And guilt is a terrible reason to keep handing people access to your life. The house changed after that. Not all at once. The first few weeks were tense and quiet, with Marin coming and going carefully and both of us communicating like we were handling glass. But the accounts were cleaner. The bills were what they were supposed to be. No hidden charges for Vesper. No Calder-shaped emergencies. No family dinner tabs dressed up as compassion. On a Sunday morning, I sat with fresh coffee beside my laptop and paid the bills that were actually mine to pay. The list was shorter than it had been in years. I kept waiting for the familiar dread, the little pinch in my chest that used to come from wondering what new expense would appear and what new accusation would follow if I questioned it. It didn't come. What came instead was sadness, but it was an honest sadness. The kind that belonged to me, not the kind someone else handed me and called duty. I'm not proud that my marriage ended in folders and certified mail. I'm not proud that relatives saw my private records. I wish Marin had sat with me months earlier and said, I'm unhappy, and I don't know how to fix it. I wish I had said years earlier, no, your mother does not get a key to our marriage. But wishing isn't a boundary. So I kept the 5 I had set. Legal or written communication only. No payments beyond real obligations. No leaving shared responsibilities because a room full of relatives decided I should. No smear campaign without an evidence-based answer. No more treating my silence as permission. Marin told people she needed space. I gave her space. I just stopped letting her family charge rent for it. They told me to leave with dignity. So I stayed calm, brought receipts, and let dignity do the damage. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.